Hi guys, it's me, HD, and welcome today to Practice 3 and the Practice 3 watch along for the 2021 Azerbaijan Grand Prix on this qualifying Saturday here in Baku. Hopefully you guys are doing well on what is a very early Saturday morning for me, 9:45 AM UK time to be precise in the UK. And I'm a bit tired from the day before, but definitely looking forward a lot to what we're going to be seeing today, because the field yesterday in practice 1 and practice 2 was, again, like we've seen in 2021, very, very close, very surprising to a certain point in terms of where certain cars were, and we'll get into that soon enough. But I am looking forward a lot to today, because I think we could see quite a few surprises and quite a surprising grid if it plays out, say, the order today, how practice 2 went, for example. I don't think it will. I think there will be certain teams, such as Mercedes, who will improve on what they did yesterday, but I think we might be in for quite a few surprises today, and that's definitely a good thing. And of course, we will cover that for you and take you through it through the entire day. And again, of course, we'll be live later for the qualifying watch along from Baku. But yeah, hopefully you guys are doing well, no matter what time it is or what part of the world you are from. And hopefully today you will join me in watching along practice 3 and also qualifying later on. Qualifying, of course, starting in about 3 hours from now. But if you did not see practice 2 yesterday and you don't know the results, let me now take you through them. The Sergio Perez was quickest, which is not actually that big of a surprise because of how good Perez is in Baku. Max Verstappen second, Red Bull 1-2, great results so far for them, but it's only practice 2, so I won't really call it a result as of such. Carlos Sainz third and Charles Leclerc fourth. Very surprising how good Ferrari were yesterday. Be very interested to see if they can maintain that, because they've, said, and I've said, because it is true, that they are still lacking that top end speed, but are still pretty close, judging by practice 2. So again, we'll see if that translates into practice 3 and qualifying. If it does, then Ferrari are probably, maybe they've improved the power levels they do have, or their aero has just improved even more than it did, or, improved even more to the point where it's much, much better than it was when we were in Bahrain or Imola earlier in the season. And then Gasly 5th, he was very good, of course, yesterday. Alonso 6th, Giovinazzi 7th, Norris 8th, Ocon 9th, and Tsunoda 10th. And then Hamilton 11th, Raikkonen 12th, and Raikkonen Stroll. Ricardo Stroll, not Raikkonen. Vettel, Bottas, Russell, Mazepin, Schumacher, and Nicholas Latifi. Latifi, the reason he finished last is because he stopped out on circuit with a problem. Those are the results of practice 2. And again, if you look at those results, there are some interesting talking points to go through. Because, coming into Baku, and I still kind of think this, I think it'll be Red Bull as the quickest team. So I'm not surprised Red Bull got a 1-2 yesterday in practice 2. But I did expect Mercedes to be not too far behind as, say, the second quickest team as Ferrari were, say, yesterday. But Mercedes yesterday were absolutely terrible. Sorry. Absolutely terrible, Mercedes were. Probably, and I think they even said it, their worst Friday in a long, long time. They just nowhere. And I think what is more so worrying for the Mercedes team is that they didn't make any obvious mistakes, the drivers. They weren't, the rear end wasn't all over the place. They weren't missing apexes or anything like that. When you actually go and look at, say, some onboard laps of the Mercedes, again, there were no real obvious reasons or mistakes as to why they ended up in P11 and P16 with Hamilton and Bottas, respectively. Again, no obvious reasons. And I think that's the most worrying thing, to be honest. Because at least if you finish low down in the timings, because, you had a few moments on track, at least you know that if you don't have those moments, that you have the potential to go a lot quicker. But Mercedes yesterday, again, and that's why it was so poor and I guess so worrying going into the rest of the weekend, is that there wasn't any real mistakes. That was just how quick they were going, or maybe willing to go. Of course, in practice too, you can still play around with what engine mode you use, and I don't think Mercedes are using their, well, of course, in practice 3, they are going to use the engine mode they're going to use for the rest of the weekend. I mean, they can still play with the fuel load in the session, though. And, of course, in qualifying, they can do that as well. So I am expecting Mercedes in this session, practice 3 coming up, I am expecting Mercedes to be better than they were in practice 2. But I don't think they will be quicker than Red Bull. I just don't see it. And normally, and I think that's what is so good for Red Bull from yesterday, is normally on a Friday, Mercedes are quicker than Red Bull. Because normally Red Bull don't push as hard as Mercedes so far this season on the Friday. And then when we come to the Saturday, I mean, look how many times Max Verstappen has topped practice 3 this season. Just shows you that once they actually, start using the engine mode they're going to use for the rest of the weekend, and they're using representative amounts of fuel, Red Bull tend to show a lot more of what they actually have. So again, Mercedes do tend to be quicker than Red Bull on a Friday, and then on a Saturday, Red Bull tend to respond and be a lot stronger. Not necessarily quicker on the Saturday at times this season, but say a lot closer. But, this weekend, it's been the other way around. Red Bull have been miles quicker so far than Mercedes, and if it does continue in the way that, Red Bull improve even more on the Saturday, once they, are starting to push even more, then Mercedes are in big trouble. They really are. And they could end up not even on the second row of the grid if they are that far off Red Bull. Because, I do expect there to be a gap of some sorts from the Red Bulls to the cars behind them. But I don't think it's going to be a big enough gap for Mercedes to get their cars into, if Red Bull are that quick as I expect. So yeah, if you're a Mercedes fan, honestly, I would be a bit concerned. I don't think you're going to end up 11th and 16th in qualifying. If you did, then yeah, race weekend over. But I think at the minute, you'd have to say Red Bull are the clear favourites for pole position today, and the race win later on, of course, tomorrow on in the Grand Prix. Of course, they have to get pole position today with one of their cars to make themselves the absolute favourites. But at the minute, I'd have to say Red Bull the clear favourites for the weekend from now on, because they've looked so good so far, and I knew they were going to be good at this track because the layout, again, like I've said before, just suits their car. So we'll see what Mercedes can do. Hopefully they can improve, because we still do want a fight up top. We'll see, of course, as well, whether Ferrari can maintain the speed of yesterday. If they can, in practice 3 and qualifying, I'd be very, very impressed, especially if we look later in the race preview at the speed traps and Ferrari are still quite a bit down. If they are, then that'd be very impressive for Ferrari to still be, a 2/10, 3/10 of a second behind pole position. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what they can do and how close they can get. They definitely looked a lot quicker than McLaren in practice yesterday. But again, I do think the McLaren team are probably sandbagging a bit yesterday. And I think we'll push a lot harder today. And normally on a Saturday, they do tend to push a lot harder than they do on a Friday. There's been plenty of Fridays where McLaren have not looked that good at all. And then on a Saturday, I've ended up with a quick-looking car and a very good track position. And for the rest of the field, it's going to be, very close. Of course, you've got Pierre Gasly in there for AlphaTauri. AlphaTauris do look quick. Even Tsunoda was in the top 10 yesterday. Alpine as well, surprisingly, looked quick. I don't think they'll maintain that the rest of the weekend, because I think that there's reasons behind that. I mean, again, you had a McLaren outside the top 10, you had 2 Mercedes outside the top 10, so I think that's more so the reason why they looked pretty good yesterday, honestly, the Alpine team. But it's good that they're looking a bit better than I thought they were going to, and as well for Alfa Romeo, with Giovinazzi up in 7th place. Again, looking a bit better than I expected. But before I get on to the session, which starts in just under 5 minutes' time, just need to get into breaking news from yesterday. You might have just seen it scroll along the bottom of the screen. So, the Singapore Grand Prix of 2021, which was supposed to take place on the first weekend of October, has been cancelled. The reason it's been cancelled is because of the COVID situation in Singapore, and because most of the teams are based in England, and the UK government has a green, amber and red travel lists, and that country is not going to be on a green travel list where you won't have to quarantine, or, won't have such strict quarantine rules, I guess you could say, when you come back to England. I think that's the main reason why Singapore has been cancelled. But also, the Japanese, Brazilian, Mexican and Australian Grand Prix currently look as though they are under serious threat from not happening. The Brazilian Grand Prix, honestly, with the situation in Brazil, I don't see that Grand Prix happening. I mean, we had enough trouble getting on the calendar in the first place, and that wasn't even due to COVID. So I don't think the Brazilian, or Sao Paulo Grand Prix, I guess you could say, is going to happen. The Mexican Grand Prix, I still hold out hope for the Mexican Grand Prix, because I still think, the United States Grand Prix is going to go ahead, and the United States have got on top of, at the minute, COVID in their country, and because Mexico, of course, is right next to, I still have hope that Mexico can get on top of the situation, but at the minute, not looking good. And of course, the Grand Prix is how many months away? 4.5 months, I think it is, to the Mexican Grand Prix. And then the Japanese Grand Prix, I mean, they're holding the Olympic Games somehow, even though there's no real justification morally for it to happen. And they said they'll monitor the situation in terms of whether they'll cancel the Japanese Grand Prix until after the Olympic Games. If I was to guess, I think Japan is not gonna happen. But definitely the Australian Grand Prix, and I've talked to Nib about this, and Nib is actually from Melbourne, as some of you know, and he said it's not going to happen, and I believe him. And if you look at the situation, even without talking to him, he's absolutely, bang on. It is not going to happen, because the travel restrictions with Australia is so, strict and all, that there's just no point going to Australia. The only way you'd be able to race in Australia is if it was the last race of the season, because at least then after that you wouldn't have any races to go to, and you wouldn't have to worry about getting to the next Grand Prix. But of course, people have families and that, so they don't want to be stuck in Australia for a very long time. So yeah, those Grand Prix are under threat. I still hold out hope for the Mexican Grand Prix, but I'd say Japanese and Brazilian probably not going to happen, and Australian definitely not going to happen. They might as well just cancel it now, the Australian Grand Prix. As I just get some of the text ready for you guys for the session. But yeah, very sad news. Of course, we want these Grand Prix to happen. I was very sad, of course, last year to not see on the calendar Suzuka, Singapore, Melbourne, tracks like that. Very sad not to see them be on the calendar, and it's going to be sad not to see them on the calendar most likely for this season, but that's just the way it is, and it's unfortunate. Nothing we can do about it. It's just the countries in their respective, or the governments in those respective countries, rather, have just still very poorly, if I'm allowed to give commentary on the situation, very poorly have handled the COVID situation in their respective countries, and that's why still, 18 months on from the start of the pandemic, they still cannot get a handle on it, and that's still why they can't host sporting events, which again is a shame, but nothing we can do about it. But practice 3 will be getting underway in about 10 seconds time. Let me just get the timer ready, and there you go. And let me just adjust the position. There you go. The session, practice 3, has now started. And of course, if you are new to Formula 1, it is only an hour-long session, practice 3, and hopefully we will get some cars on track very, very soon. It looks as though we're going to get the Haas cars on circuit. And yep, the Haas cars now come out onto the track. And, well, I expect these two to, and no disrespect to Mick Schumacher, I do expect the Haas cars to be causing red flags and safety cars later in the weekend, so they need to get some practice in now in case that isn't the case, because I think once, again, they push at their absolute maximum, that car's probably not going to be able to handle this circuit very much. But yeah, Mick and Nikita on circuit. And once we get other cars on the track, I'll let you know. And once we get some lap times on the board, of course, I'll change the order on the left-hand side of the screen. Of course, it's in currently the team-by-team order. And again, I'll change it once we get some times going on the board. But before we get to that, let me just quickly read out some comments from you guys in the live chat. Also, just want to say, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this, because again, I will be live for the qualifying watch along later on. We'll be going live at 12:30 p.m. UK time, which is in about 2.5 hours from now. And then, of course, we'll be live for the race watch along tomorrow at the same time. And, of course, we're doing qualifying and race watch alongs for every race remaining, no matter how many races there are in 2021 here this season. So don't forget to subscribe for that. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it there, or go to my homepage and hit the notifications bell as well. Don't forget to smash the like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can. As the two Haases are on the soft compound tyre and now begin their laps. Mick Schumacher will be first, and then it will be Nikita Mazepin. Of course, the final sector is just full throttle. Very, very long straight. And of course, it is the most important part of the circuit. You can have a great lap up until the exit of turn 16. But if you do not have a slipstream from a car ahead, or you don't have the power in general down that straight, doesn't matter how good a lap you've had, you're not going to get the position you quite want, because again, that final straight is so, so important. As Mick Schumacher starts his lap, well, he's on his lap now, he's into turn 3 just about now. Turning left. And we'll now go into the right-hander. And the car, from Mick Schumacher's point of view, as Lewis Hamilton now walks into the pits. Car looks okay so far, nothing special. Of course, in practice 2 yesterday, they were doing 1 minute 42s, low 42s. So we'll use that as the benchmark to see how quick or slow the lap times are in practice 3. Also, another thing to mention, even though there is, I think, a tad bit of wind, a very small bit of wind out there, it is very hot in Baku today. Very, very hot. It's, I think, 30 degrees Celsius around there. A very hot track temperature here in Baku. And that will, of course, play a factor later on. And as well, of course, in the race, if it's very hot, like it's been so far this weekend, it will play a massive factor in what happens later on. As Mick Schumacher now into that final sector and on the pit straight. and we'll see what lap time he will do. He now comes up to line. It's going to be a very slow lap time compared to practice 2. It's a 1 minute 48.1 as Mazepin goes quicker than him. So let me just update that. Peter Mazepin up into position 1. I will say, and I know we banter him a lot, Nikita Mazepin, but he is improving. It's not massive, but he is improving, and I think that is a good thing, because even though, of course, he's not the, he's not proven to be the greatest human being in the world, put it that way, and he's not exactly the greatest driver in the world, definitely not the greatest at moving out of the way of other cars, he is improving over time. At least he's not getting worse or, you know, just staying as bad as he was. So that is something, and as long as he can keep doing that, then he should at least still be respectable. He won't be as good as Mick Schumacher this season, and I think, honestly, if there is someone going to score points for them, the Haas F1 team, it is probably going to be Mick Schumacher, but he is closing that gap, is Nikita Mazepin. There you go, Mazepin first, Mick Schumacher second for the moment, and the third car on circuit is the Alpine of Fernando Alonso, who so far has had a very good weekend. He finished 9th in practice 1 and 6th in practice 2. Of course, single lap speed has been Fernando Alonso's biggest weakness. And if he can get a good starting position in races, rather than starting so far back, you know, 15th or 16th or 14th or even 13th, if he can start more so, you know, right there with his teammate or just ahead, then Alonso, I mean, we've seen so far this season, he's got the race pace. He just needs to get the qualifying right and the single lap right. And hopefully, this weekend, he'll continue his good form. But yeah, I'll read out the chat for a minute or so, as we've not really got any action on the circuit. Again, most cars on or in the pits. Ken Gray says hello from Deerfield, Nova Scotia. Hello to you. I think it's very early in the morning there, so yeah, definitely great commitment from you to be watching this stream. And he says Mercedes needs more downforce. Well, later on, when we do the race preview and look at the sector times and speed traps, it's going to be very interesting to see if Mercedes are miles behind Red Bull. It'll be very interesting to see what the exact reason is, because honestly, I thought in the middle sector that would be where Mercedes would really be keeping tabs with Red Bull and keep them on their toes, as Fernando Alonso on the medium compound tyre starts his first timed run. It just come through turn 2 now. Late Night Live asks, can they replace Singapore with one of the later tracks and have Singapore later in the season? No. Remember as well, I mean, Singapore, again, was supposed to take place in early October, and the season ends in mid-December, so, it's not like we have a massive amount of the season left. So yeah, that's just not possible. I mean, the reason the Australian Grand Prix has been moved to November is to try and increase the chances of the race happening, which I do think that, of course, the race was cancelled in March, and it was never really going to happen. And moving it again to November increased the chances massively, but again, because of the rules from Australia about quarantining and all of that, just not viable and possible with there being, 2 races after that, Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi. As Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin improved their lap times, but still very slow, as Fernando Alonso even actually going slower than Mazepin so far, about 1/10 of a second down after the first 2 sectors, as he now comes through the 2 kinks of 18 and 19, and now through another kink in turn 20. Again, though, it's all full throttle, all basically one massive straight, as he's doing just over 320 kilometers an hour, and comes to the line and goes second, about 1/10 of a second down on Mazepin. But he is on the medium compound tyre. And I will say, I don't know exactly. I mean, I'll try and look later when they do the opening sequence for the F1 broadcast. I don't know what exact tyre compounds we have in terms of, is it the C3 as the softest or the C4 or whatever. I think it's the C4 as the softest compound this weekend. But the difference, the point I'm trying to make is the difference between the tyres in terms of performance is massive this weekend. It's about a second between the soft and the medium. So I don't think you're going to see anyone today trying to get through on a medium compound tyre. I just don't see it. Unless Red Bull have a massive gap to the rest of the field, I don't see anyone going for a medium compound tyre in Q2. I don't see it because, again, the amount of time you will lose going for that it's not worth it. Especially if you're a Mercedes who's struggling a bit by the looks of it. At the moment, as Sky F1 have gone to an ad break, so I'll just come to you guys in the chat again. Miss Marquise responding to Late Night Live and also saying that highly unlikely Melbourne will go ahead. I live here and we're on maximum lockdown due to government incompetence, so I'd say there'll be an opening in November. Yeah, if you don't know, Melbourne is in a full lockdown because, well, whenever they have a case, they go into lockdown, and if the cases don't go away, then they just stay in lockdown, which, you may not agree with that, but, and, you know, lockdowns obviously are not good. No one's going to claim that. But, you know, doing it so soon, so early, has proven to be successful for them, so you can't exactly blame them for doing it. And because they've still not really vaccinated anyone in Australia, again, that's the reason why it's just not viable to race in Australia this season. And honestly, I would say I don't think there'll be an Australian Grand Prix probably until 2023, because I don't see the situation being that much different in 2022, because Australia, some of the people in government there have talked about not really allowing international travel for another 2 or 3 years. So yeah, the Australian Grand Prix, I think you'll be lucky to see an Australian Grand Prix happening again in the next couple years. 2023 at the earliest. Definitely not in March 2022. I think that's way too soon because, again, they need time, Australia, to, vaccinate the population, which I think is what they're looking to do before they start opening up a bit more to international travel. Which is a smart thing, to be honest, to protect, domestic freedom and all of that. So, yeah, that's just the situation. It's sad, again. Melbourne, great track to go to race at. But, there are things, of course, more important than Formula One. Jane, who said... I think it's a she. I hope it's a she. Says, I am in Melbourne. The state government is the worst. Louis de France says that the tyres, according to Pirelli, are soft C5, medium C4, and hard C3. Oh, interesting. Didn't think they'd bring the softest compounds here. I know it's a street circuit, but normally in Baku, they've not done that before. Normally, it'll be the second softest tyre. They'll bring us the softest, if you know what I mean, the C4 instead of the C5. As Sergio Perez, by the way, goes up to P1 as we come back from the ad break. So Sergio Perez up into first place, looking very good. Perez might actually be in contention for pole position. Imagine that, if he gets pole position. As Mazepin, replay of him, I think, clipping the wall on the exit of turn 15. No, just getting very close to it. Maybe slightly clipping it, but nothing really to worry about there. As Charles Leclerc is about to start a lap on the medium compound tyre, so we'll see in a moment what he can do. But just going to update some of the order. So Sergio Perez is in P1, and then in P2 it is Yuki Tsunoda in second place. He's got a yellow flag in Sector 1 and Sector 2. Don't know why that is. Kimi Raikkonen goes second. And now the track is clear. Again, don't know why there was a yellow flag then. I'll let you guys know in a moment if there's a replay that shows us why. As Leclerc has abandoned his lap because of traffic ahead. So maybe the traffic ahead is what caused that particular... And here we go, replay at turn 4, I think this is. And Verstappen goes, turn 4, Verstappen into the right-hander. Instead of going right, goes just straight on. Not a great start for Max Verstappen, but he was not on a lap, I don't believe, at the time. But Giovinazzi is now up to second place. Looking quite good is Antonio so far this weekend. Again, was P7 in practice 2, which is definitely much higher than I expected an Alfa Romeo to be this weekend. I thought Alfa Romeo would be around 13th, 14th, to be honest. As then it's Tsunoda 4th, just behind Kimi Räikkönen 3rd. As Max Verstappen is about to start a lap on the hard compound tyre. Comes through turn 1, we'll see what he can do. Be very interesting to see, as Lewis Hamilton says on team radio, really poor grip. So seemingly the situation is not improving at Mercedes so far, which is a shame. As Max Verstappen, again on the hard compound tyre now through turn 3. What I was going to say is it'll be interesting to see how quick he can go compared to his teammate. I don't think his teammate was on the hard compound tyre, but again, we'll see. As Verstappen just over half a tenth quicker than Perez in the first sector. It's not a purple first sector, but it is quicker so far, as Max Verstappen now comes from turn 7. And now he will come into the castle section, turn 8, 9 and 10 and 11. Now through turn 12. Very good part of the circuit, very challenging, especially for the drivers in qualifying. As he now flies through the double left-hand kink, 13 and 14. Now down to turn 15, a very tricky braking zone. If you look up the inside front and you don't take the escape road, then you are going to end up missing out on doing any more running, because you will end up straight in the barriers, as Max Verstappen, after the first 2 sectors, is about 0.7 of a second down on Sergio Perez. I think Perez, was probably on the medium, but Verstappen now coming onto the pit straight. Where will he go? Of course, with this first lap time of the day, and Verstappen goes up to 5th position. So Max Verstappen, decent lap there by him, and I think about 2nd behind his teammate. As Pierre Gasly, as they show the running order again on the screen, Pierre Gasly has gone up to 2nd. Again, Gasly very good yesterday and was very, very quick. And Hamilton saying no rear end or front on team radio, so still not happy. As Charles Leclerc now goes up to 2nd place. Only I was going to say Sergio Perez is still 1st. He is not. Yuki Tsunoda now goes up to P1 on a 1 minute 43.4. Very quick lap there for the Japanese driver. Charles Leclerc now up into 2nd place for Ferrari. And then in 3rd place is Carlos Sainz. The 2 Ferrari drivers, as usual, very close on lap time. There you go, Sainz up to 3rd, and it's Perez and Gasly and Giovinazzi Räikkönen from 4th to 7th. And then Valtteri Bottas is now in 8th position, just ahead of Max Verstappen 9th. Lando Norris is up into 10th. And then you've got Daniel Ricciardo 11th, and then Latifi in 12th position there, ahead of Mazepin 13th, Alonso 14th, and then Ocon 15th, Hamilton 16th, and then Mick Schumacher, of course, 17th, and then Russell Vettel and Stroll down the bottom. I think that's because, though, those three at the bottom have not done a lap time so far. And here comes Russell on the soft compound tyre to do his first timed run, I think, of the session so far. As Daniel Ricciardo goes up to 5th position. That's a lot more like it from the McLaren driver. As Lewis Hamilton goes up to P7 in the Mercedes, just ahead of the two Alfa Romeos of Giovinazzi and Raikkonen. There you go, Hamilton up to P7 as Russell, quite a bit slower, I have to say, in the first sector compared to Yuki Tsunoda, even though he's on a softer compound of tyre, I believe. As Russell now comes into the, again, tricky braking zone of turn 15. Car doesn't look bad at all. No obvious weaknesses or mistakes, and I think that just shows you that the Williams car is still pretty poor aerodynamically because, again, there's nothing obviously wrong, but it's just obviously slow compared to the rest. As Russell now comes through onto the pit straight, we'll have a slipstream from a car ahead of a McLaren as Pierre Gasly has done a purple middle sector and is 0.3 of a second up on his teammate Yuki Tsunoda, as Lando Norris has done a decent middle sector on the hard compound tyre, only 0.6 of a second down on Tsunoda. As Gasly now will come to the line on the soft compound tyre and do a 1 minute 43.1 and go fastest by a quarter of a second. So Pierre Gasly up to P1. Currently an AlphaTauri 1-2. As Antonio Giovinazzi goes up to 5th place in the Alfa Romeo on a 44.1. That's second down on Gasly, who again has just gone up to P1. And just to let you guys know, Lewis Hamilton did his time on the medium compound tyre. Just want to read out a comment though, quick, in the chat about Mercedes' struggles from 1PR, who says, I think Merc are struggling on the softer compound of tyres. Portugal and Spain were the hardest compound tyres, where Monaco and Baku are the softest. I think it is definitely a factor. I mean, they are struggling to warm the tyres up, which, to be honest, with the softer compounds, you'd imagine it'd actually be easier to warm them up because there's more performance in them and they're a lot more lively, again, with the amount of grip that's in there, rather, you know, compared to the harder compound of tyre. But like you said, they might, if they are struggling with the softer compounds, and you know, that's just, especially in a street circuit, that is just a massive handicap for them. It really is. And we did have this with Mercedes back in 2017. I remember in 2017, I think 2016 as well, Mercedes, even though of course they were still very, very quick then, they would always do better at races where there were harder compounds brought to certain races. When you brought the softest compounds, Mercedes wouldn't quite be as strong as they actually could be on the harder compound of tyres. So might be a similar factor this season, as Carlos Sainz is about to start a lap on the medium compound tyre. Meanwhile, Sergio Perez has just gone up to 4th place. And Max Verstappen has gone up to 5th. Be very interested to know if Max Verstappen did that time on the hard compound, because if he did, then he's 0.6 of a second quicker than Hamilton and Verstappen on a harder compound of tyre, which is worrying to say the least. Yeah, Perez 4th and Verstappen in 5th with Sainz, Giovinazzi, Ricciardo, Hamilton, and now you've got Esteban Ocon in 10th position, just had a Raikkonen, Bottas, Norris, Latifi, and then you've got Vettel in 15th, just had a Mazepin, and then Russell is in 17th, Alonso 18th, Schumacher 19th, and Stroll in 20th place. Lance Stroll has not set a lap time as of yet, as we are 25 minutes into the session. And Carlos Sainz is on a lap currently, as Pierre Gasly has done the quickest Sector 1. Of course, already the... Oh, and Carlos Sainz almost having an accident there at turn 15. Had traffic ahead, had obviously dirty air from the car ahead, and lost the rear end and almost went into the barrier on the right-hand side through turn 15. Very lucky to get away with that, as he's basically now aborted that lap. As, talking of Lance Stroll, he has just gone up into 9th position, which is obviously very good for him. As Max Verstappen into the barriers at turn 15. And will he get going again? His suspension is broken. I think his right front and his one of the front tyres, his suspension is definitely knackered, because he's unable, I think, to turn and get out of the barriers at turn 15. Not good for Verstappen, with what looks like the fastest car, probably for qualifying, now has a broken car. And Verstappen now just stationary through the mid part of turn 15. And I don't know what he's going to do, Max Verstappen, but he can't... Well, he's going to try and get going again, but I think he has a broken right front suspension. Possibly left front as well. Or it might just be the left front. We'll have to see a different angle for me to tell. And a red flag has come out. Of course, the timer will keep running, but Max Verstappen is out of the session, getting out of the car now. And that is a big mistake to be making with qualifying so close. Only couple hours away, and yeah, into turn 15, Verstappen locks the inside front, and yeah, it's the right front suspension that's broken. Locks the inside front and literally just drifts into the barriers, hits the barriers, and again, out of the session. That's the reason he couldn't get out of the barriers, is because he couldn't turn left, of course, because the right front suspension was broken. That's why Max Verstappen is now out of the practice 3 session in Baku. They should be able to get that car fixed in time, because it's only, I think, the suspension and the front wing that needs fixing, and the Red Bull crew can definitely get that done in a couple of hours. But not what not what you're really wanting going into qualifying when you're being looked at as the favourite for pole position. So we'll see what this does for Verstappen later on, but this is not good. Not good at all for him. Exactly what he didn't need. Needed a consistent session where he showed the speed of the Red Bull. But he's now going to be unable to show it. As, don't know what Verstappen's complaining about. He's still driving the car, I think, even though he's halfway out of the car. The car keeps creeping forward. But I just want to update the order quick whilst we've got a red flag. As, yeah, Fernando Alonso, before that red flag. As, by the way, Pierre Gasly did go even quicker in P1. So Gasly's still in P1. And then you've got Fernando Alonso in P12 now from P19. Raikkonen 13th, and then Bottas, Norris, and then Russell briefly, or now has rather, gone up to 16th with Latifi 17th, and then Vettel, Mazepin, and Schumacher. So that's the order. In practice 3, so again, we currently have a red flag with just over half an hour to go in practice 3. Just want to say again, though, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this, because we will be live for the qualifying watch-along later on today at 12:30 PM UK time, which is in about 2 hours from now. So again, don't forget to subscribe for that. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there, or go to my homepage and do it there and hit the notifications bell. And as well, don't forget to smash the like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can. As Verstappen disappointingly now sits on a cement block, ruining his mistake. It shouldn't be too big of a job for Red Bull to fix that car, but it's not great for Verstappen going into the session, because now he puts a lot of pressure on himself. One, to get pole position, which he should, because Red Bull look as though they do have the best car out there. so far this weekend, but also to not crash like he's done there. Because if he gets into, if we get to Q1 or Q2 and he does that, he'll be out the session, and that'll be a massive blow for him in the World Championship. So it does put a lot of pressure on Max Verstappen going into the qualifying session that follows this session very soon. Let me just quickly, though, read some comments. Corn Monster says, let's go Sainz. Infinite says, what the fuck is Max doing? Get out. Yeah, he's just trying to get back to the pits, isn't he? I think that's what he was trying to do, is trying to get back to the pits. I think he knew his car was damaged. He was just trying to get back to the pits. To obviously give his team more time to fix his car, which is understandable, but given the damage he had on his car, I mean, it's not really going to get back to the pits, because, again, his right front suspension's broke, and there's, 2 left-handers still to go, so he wasn't going to get back to the pits anyway. Let me see if I can find some other comments here. Adele says 24 race, it might be a bit too much for 2021. I will say, going back to the whole situation with the races and the calendar, if they do cancel, I mean, of course they've cancelled Singapore, so we're now down to 22 races for the season. Of course, we've already done 5. If they do cancel Japan, Brazil, Mexico, Australia, which they probably will, because, in September, or end of August, September, you've got Belgium, Italy, Holland as a triple header, and then 2 weeks later you've got Russia. If they're going to cancel Singapore and Japan, I mean, if the United States Grand Prix is going to go ahead, as long as the situation in Texas, which at the minute is actually really good, they've basically just gone back to normal in Texas, which is good to see, and not suffered for it. If that stays the way it is, of course, we'll have the American Grand Prix, but because of the travel restrictions and all of that, and given that it's not viable to travel continent to continent as quickly as, say, we used to do with Formula 1 a couple years ago, they should just keep the teams in Europe as long as they can, with races in Europe. So, bring back Mugello, bring back the Nürburgring. Because, again, after those races at Spa, Monza, Zandvoort, and Sochi, you're still going to be in Europe, so you might as well keep them there, because, again, all the teams are based in Europe, and most of them are based in England. So, there's a higher chance that races will be viable if you keep them in Europe, rather than, trying to race in other places. Apparently, the Liberty, they're looking at a race in Turkey, a race in China, which is interesting, to say the least, and a second race at Austin as the replacement races, which I have to say, a second race in Austin, I'm not against, because if you can get one race in there, say again, if they do cancel the other 4 races we talked about, Japan, Mexico, Brazil, Australia, if they can get another race in Austin, then that's a good idea, because, you want to try and get as many races as you can in North America. So, that, there's no problem with that. But, I mean, Turkey, yes, that's fine, racing in Turkey, but it depends where you place it in the calendar. I would say if you're going to race in Turkey, it needs to be after the Russian Grand Prix, because it's so close to Russia. So if you're going to have the Turkish Grand Prix, again, it needs to be that first weekend in October, where it would have been the Singapore Grand Prix. That's where it needs to be, instead of, in November again. And then a race in China. No idea where the logical sense is coming to have that as a possible replacement. The reason we're cancelling races is because of COVID, yet they're going to go to ground zero of COVID to replace races cancelled due to COVID. Makes no sense. So, yeah, hopefully there is not a race in China, because there's no way the teams are going to be able to get to China and be able to then get to another race soon after, because nobody wants to travel to China due to COVID. Nobody wants to travel to China. And plus, once you leave, you'll have to quarantine for as long as possible. So, you know, very, very stupid to be thinking of racing in China. Very, very stupid. If they do race in China, then they deserve all the hassle and misery they'll get from the whole quarantining after, because they know exactly what they're getting themselves into if they even bother doing that. As we've got 25 minutes in the session to go, the green flag is about to go green, and it does, and the cars are back out on track, such as Vettel, Bottas, Stroll, and some others. Norris, a Williams there, of Russell as well. But, you know, no point racing in China. I don't have a problem, again, with the Turkish or a second race in Austin, but racing in China, I mean, it's so stupid. So stupid. What I would do is, you know, again, you can have your 2 races in Austin, say back-to-back. You can have the second race in Austin be where the Mexican Grand Prix would have been, say Halloween weekend. But before then, I would have a race in Turkey, and then probably the Nürburgring, because of course last year we had a race in the Nürburgring in October and it went ahead just fine, so I don't see why they can't do it again. And again, it keeps the teams in Europe where they're based. It makes it easier for them when it comes to quarantining and travel and all of that. So again, it's a better situation for them. And then after the American races, what you do with that gap in November where there's, well, currently, by the looks of it, not going to be a Grand Prix at all. I mean, maybe you put Turkey in there and maybe replace that slot of Singapore with, I don't know, Mugello. But again, keeping the teams in Europe, I think, is most preferable. If they do, say, do a Turkish Grand Prix in November again, say mid-November, then yeah, you know, in early October, I think you'd have to do Mugello and Nürburgring as a back-to-back. Again, if you're going to keep them in Europe, which I think is most preferable, to be honest. But in November, if you have the Turkish Grand Prix, what you have after that, but before the final 2 races in Saudi and Abu Dhabi, I don't know. I'm trying to think of other, I mean, maybe they host a race in Hockenheim, you know, 2 races in Germany. That's a possibility. But again, if I'm FOM, Liberty, you know, the people running the sport, you've got to keep them in Europe as long as possible, because it's the most viable way of doing as many races as they want to do, which is, of course, 23. You can't just go continent to continent anymore. And, of course, hopefully we can soon, but at the moment we just can't. So they need to think realistically, and again, viably, what is the best way of getting 23 races on the calendar, and it's by having those 4 races that are going to be probably cancelled replaced by 4 European Grand Prix. As Valtteri Bottas, by the way, very close to the wall on the exit of turn 15. So yeah, hopefully sense is seen, and we end up with, you know, a couple races in Europe to keep the teams from, you know, suffering a very bad decision, you know, with quarantining and that. As with now 20 minutes to go, we're getting some more lap times on the board as Sebastian Vettel goes up to 8th position in the Aston Martin, ahead of his teammate Lance Stroll and ahead of his former teammate Daniel Ricciardo, as Hamilton and Bottas did a lap time then that was not very quick, quite slow actually, on the medium compound tyre. As Here's a replay of him getting held up very badly by an Aston Martin ahead of him. I don't know what Aston Martin it was. I think it was Lance Stroll, just parked on the apex, really, of turn 16. If that was qualifying, he'd definitely get a penalty for that. As Nicholas Latifi is on an improved lap, as we're seeing him on the TV broadcast now, through the double left kink of 13 and 14, now to turn 15. And looks good through there. Again, I will say, I've made this point before, but Nicholas Latifi has improved a lot this season and is right there with his teammate a lot more than he was in 2020, which is good to see. As Hamilton, by the way, has done an improved first sector in the Mercedes. As Latifi on the soft compound tyre comes to the line and goes 6th. This shows you the improvement in time with, tyre difference. The Latifi up into 6th position as Hamilton now comes through the turn 18 and 19 kink onto the pit straight now. Yeah, Latifi up to 6th in the Williams. Pushing Carlos Sainz down to 7th. Latifi, though, still a 2nd behind Gasly as Hamilton stays in 13th position. Mercedes currently down in 13th and 17th place. Where is the speed? The only thing they could be sandbagging on in this session is tyres and fuel. They are sandbagging with the tyres, not quite showing their hand. Of course, that's what sandbagging means in Formula 1. So they can go quicker than that compared to, say, Pierre Gasly. They can probably get inside the top 5 at the minute. But on that medium compound tyre, is still the car just doesn't look as though it's really at it at all this weekend. And that is a big problem, of course, as Lance Stroll has just gone up to 4th place in the Aston Martin. Lance Stroll only 0.6 of a second behind Pierre Gasly, I believe, on the same compound of tyre. As we've now got the 2 Ferraris of Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz out on track on an outlap on the soft compound tyre. And we also have Sergio Perez on an outlap. Of course, the man who topped practice 2 and someone who has always been very good here, been one of the best drivers in terms of pure performance around Baku. He qualified 2nd in 2016, but dropped back because of a grid penalty. Still ended up finishing in 3rd place. In 2017, he probably would have got a podium. Probably would have won the race, to be honest, if it wasn't for his teammate bouncing him into the wall in that particular edition of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. 2018... good qualifying, finish on the podium. 2019, again, good qualifying. This time did not finish on the podium, but did get a top 6 finish. So you've got to look out for Sergio Perez later for the fight for pole position, because he very well could get pole. And interestingly, yesterday, Perez said that he now finally understands the car after his practice day yesterday. Which, if that is true, the Mercedes have got to be worried, because Sergio Perez has the potential to do some damage, because he is a pretty good driver. Always been very underrated, has the Mexican. As Charles Leclerc is on a lap now. He's not using DRS, though, in the 2nd DRS zone. The reason is because there was a yellow flag from a Williams, I think, possibly ahead of Nicholas Latifi. I think that's the reason why there was a yellow flag just then. Hopefully not another problem for Latifi, who stopped out on track in practice 2. He's having a good session at the moment. As Leclerc, again, has backed off. Pierre Gasly is now on an outlap in the AlphaTauri. Of course, Gasly in P1, and so is Yuki Tsunoda. And Latifi, that was such a weird mistake, really. He didn't really lock up. It's like he forgot there was a left-hand turn and just ended up going straight on. And then kind of realised, oh yeah, it's, we turn left here. And then just again went straight on. Very unusual mistake. Maybe distracted by changing a dial on his steering wheel, as Carlos Sainz has done a purple first sector and then blown it because he's gone straight down the escape road at turn 15. And now we'll have to do a 360. Or he reverses back onto circuit, which, I'll be honest, I don't agree with. I know, a street circuit, sometimes it's hard to spin back round, but down that escape road, you can actually do it. And I don't like cars reversing back onto the circuit around a street circuit. I'm sorry. It's very dangerous, and it's going to result in a big crash one day. And them allowing it is an absolute travesty as far as I'm concerned, as he locked up the outside front. Therefore, meaning he had no choice but to go down the escape road. And honestly, he could have spun that round and got going again. I mean, yeah, maybe he doesn't want to damage his tyres, but reversing onto track is not exactly the safest way of getting back onto circuit. So yeah, I don't like that at all. Don't like it at all. As Daniel Ricciardo has gone up into fourth place, I believe. Yes, he has. Fourth place, half a second off of Pierre Gasly. So Daniel Ricciardo up to fourth, and it is Stroll fifth, and Perez, Verstappen. Of course, Verstappen is out of the session with that crash, and then Latifi 8th, Sainz in 9th, and Giovinazzi 10th, and then you've got Vettel, and then it is Lando Norris in 12th position, with Hamilton 13th, and then Ocon, Alonso, Raikkonen, Bottas, Russell, Mazepin, and Schumacher. At the moment, the rest of your order, with just under 14 minutes to go. I will say, if you look at the pace at the moment from the certain teams, I still think Red Bull have the strongest car, but AlphaTauri, and I said this coming into the weekend, the Honda-powered teams are going to be very strong here because they do have, from what I know so far, the strongest power unit on the grid. As, by the way, Schumacher is now ahead of Mazepin in the order. Yeah, Honda do have the strongest power unit, as far as I know, on the grid, and we'll see that later in the race preview with the speed traps, whether that is true, and I think it will be. So yeah, the Honda-powered teams I knew would be very good this weekend, and it looks as though to me at the moment, and this is surprising to say, but to me, I would say that the running order is Red Bull first and AlphaTauri second. That's what it looks so to me. I mean, I'm sure Ferrari can go quicker. Of course, in the first sector on Sainz's lap, he was quicker than Gasly. So Ferrari can improve as Mazepin clips the wall on the exit of turn 15. Pushing a bit too hard there. Just kicking the rear out on the exit, and I think breaking his car in the process. Possibly, yeah, probably with that one. So yeah, I'd say Red Bull probably quickest, from AlphaTauri second, and then Ferrari third, and then probably McLaren and Mercedes, around 4th, 5th in the pecking order right now. Mercedes still have a lot to find, and they will find it, because again, they've not got on the soft compound tyre as of yet in this session. They can go a lot quicker, can them, but they're not as quick as AlphaTauri in this session, definitely not. They're nowhere near them. Even if they go on the soft compound tyre, I don't think they're going to end up going quickest in this session. So, worrying times for Mercedes. They cannot afford to have cars in between them and the Red Bulls. If Red Bull get the front row with Verstappen on pole, and there's 4 or 5 cars in between them and Red Bull, then, of course, I mean, you can overtake in Baku, but Mercedes haven't exactly got the quickest car in a straight line. So, going to be a very tough race if that does happen in qualifying later on, as Charles Leclerc, after the first 2 sectors, is half a second up on Pierre Gasly with a purple middle sector. Perez, though, I believe is going even quicker. Actually, he's not, but he might actually still end up top, because in the final sector, the Red Bull is very quick, as Charles Leclerc does go P1 by just under 0.3 of a second. But we'll see now what Sergio Perez can do. as he comes to the line in just a moment. Of course, the Red Bull so quick on this pit straight, and Perez does go P1 by just under 0.2 of a second. And Perez, after the first two sectors, was about 1/4 of a second slower than Charles Leclerc, but ended up reclaiming 3 or 4 tenths in that final sector alone. Just shows you again, Honda power looks very strong for this Grand Prix meeting, as Perez up to P1, yellow flag in sector 2 and 3. Don't know who that's for. But yeah, Perez up to P1, Leclerc second, Gasly third, Fernando Alonso in the green flag now in that part of the track. Fernando Alonso has just gone up into 4th position, interestingly, in the Alpine. So Alonso up to 4th. Carlos Sainz is now in 5th position, with Tsunoda 6th. Esteban Ocon is in 7th for Alpine. And it's Ricciardo, Stroll, and now Kimi Raikkonen in 10th position. So Alfa Romeo is still kind of in there. Of course, Max Verstappen now down to P11 now that he's out of the session. Latifi 12th. And then Giovinazzi 13th. And then Vettel 14th. And then Norris 15th. And Russell has actually just gone above the 2 Mercedes. Mercedes currently 17th and 18th. Again, they're not on the soft compound tyre as of yet, with 9 minutes to go. We'll see if they come out on the soft compound tyre. I'm not sure they will. But even if they do a time on the soft compound tyre, I don't see them getting inside the top 5 at all at the moment, because, I mean, the amount of time you gain from medium to soft is not more than, you know, what they need. So, but Mercedes are in a bit of trouble here, no doubt. About 2 seconds off of Sergio Perez's quickest lap so far, and Perez's quickest lap not even as quick as what he did in practice 2. So Red Bull can go much quicker. As Valtteri Bottas 4 tenths off in the first sector alone, and Bottas is now is on the soft tyre. 4 tenths off in the first sector. How do you lose that much time in a Mercedes if in that first sector? I don't understand where the pace has gone so far for the Silver Arrows. As Carlos Sainz also comes into the pits. As Lando Norris is on the soft compound tyre and comes up to the middle sector now. And he is 1/4 of a second down on Sergio Perez. Runs slightly wide on the exit of turn 16. There's a yellow flag in... Well, there was all sectors, and now there's a yellow flag in sector 1. Don't know what for. As Norris will come to the line. Bottas has backed off, so I'm assuming Bottas has possibly made a mistake. As Norris comes to the line and goes from 15th up into 8th position. So Lando Norris up to 8th. And now we've got a virtual safety car. I don't know if they're just doing a test. Oh, no, they're not. It's because the Williams of George Russell has broken down. I don't know where that is. I think that might be the runoff at turn 1. We'll have to see in a moment. But George Russell out of the session because of a certain car problem. Don't know what that car problem is as of yet. But of course, he's 16th. And yeah, I think that is the runoff at turn 1. So we'll see in a moment why he has stopped. I'm sure the replay, here we go. Oh no, this is a replay of Sebastian Vettel. Probably why this was a yellow flag at turn 15. And yet, there you go, Vettel locking the outside front and then doing what you should do. Spinning the car around and getting going again, rather than just reversing very selfishly back onto track. Showing the others how it's done. As Vettel having a, well, not a great session, but I think there's definitely a lot more potential for Sebastian Vettel in that Aston Martin. And yet, green flags now as Russell's car has been completely cleared away. And the Williams team not looking too happy, but that's just the way it is. At least they've got Latifi up in 13th place as we now looking at a McLaren. And now Ferrari of Carlos Sainz on the soft compound tyre. Hopefully, we'll see Carlos Sainz going for another timed run here. And hopefully, will not make a mistake. Because he's been on 2 very good timed runs so far in this session with purple sectors. Then ended up bottling it at turn 15 twice. So, needs to get his act together over the single lap. And hopefully, with now 5 minutes to go in practice 3, can show what he has in his locker. And whether he could possibly compete for a top 2 or 3 grid position later on. Again, the pace of the Ferrari, much better than I expected. Of course, in qualifying, we'll see if it's legitimate and whether they're running possibly just a lot less fuel in this session as Sainz gets the slipstream off of Nicholas Latifi ahead. It'll be interesting to see where Ferrari are in qualifying. If they can end up getting a second row lockout, that would be a tremendous result. And that would actually put Ferrari right in the game for this season. Not at every single racetrack, but with the drivers they have and the car they have that is improving all the time. Ferrari, without doubt, making moves in 2021. Carlos Sainz has not done an improved first sector. That was despite him getting a slipstream from the Williams ahead, as Pierre Gasly, who is currently in 3rd place, has done a purple first sector. We'll see what Gasly can do. As Sainz, for the middle sector, does a green middle sector, which is, of course, personal best. He's only half a tenth down on Sergio Perez, but because of the final sector, don't think he'll improve any more on that. As Gasly is almost 0.6 of a second up on Sergio Perez in the Honda-powered AlphaTauri, as Lando Norris goes up to 4th position in the McLaren. Carlos Sainz goes up now into 4th place in the Ferrari. Pierre Gasly will come to the line. Surely Gasly will go quickest. He does by 3.5 of a second. Pierre Gasly looking very competitive here and might actually be in the fight for pole position. As Valtteri Bottas only P11 on the soft compound tyre. I know someone in the chat was just saying there that FP3 is not representative. True, it's not fully representative as Lewis Hamilton goes up to 3rd, which is a lot more like it from him, but he's still 4.5 down on Pierre Gasly. So still not great, I'd have to say, for Mercedes there, as he does a purple final sector. I think he had a very good slipstream from a car ahead, to be honest. Again, not fully representative, because even though they've decided, and they are using the engine mode they're going to use for qualifying, and they're now on the soft compound tyre, they are still able with fuel to hide their true performance, and I'm sure plenty of teams are still doing that, but this is a lot more representative of a session than you would get in practice 1 or practice 2. Again, because they are using the engine mode they will use for the rest of the weekend. As, yeah, Lewis Hamilton, just seeing a replay there, Hamilton did get a very good slipstream from a Red Bull of Sergio Perez ahead of him, so that's a big reason why Hamilton went up to 3rd place. I wouldn't quite say that was a representative lap, if I'm being honest. Let me just update some of the order, though, or the rest of the order. So, Sebastian Vettel has just gone up to P11. It's Stroll in 12th. And then Valtteri Bottas in 13th position. And then Raikkonen, Max Verstappen, Nicholas Latifi, Giovinazzi, Russell, Schumacher, Mazepin. Your top 10 with about a minute to go. Gasly, Perez, Hamilton, Leclerc, Sainz, Norris, Alonso, Tsunoda, Ocon, Ricciardo. A couple cars on outlaps, but I don't think they're going to do anything. No, they're going to come back into the pits. So, guys, I think that's basically it for the session. So, unless we get any more lap times, we'll have to see. But at the moment, you'd have to say Honda Power is ruling the way. First and second at the moment in practice 3. And in practice 2, of course, they were 1 and 2. And without doubt, Red Bull and even AlphaTauri, they are right up there and in the fight for pole position and a top 5 starting position in general. So it could be very interesting to see the battle between the 2 Honda-powered teams. This is a yellow yellow flag in Sector 1 is what I was trying to say. Yeah, going to be very interesting to see what happens between the 2 Honda-powered teams in qualifying, because they are looking very good. Mainly because, again, of the Honda Power Unit being so good in the final sector. And it was Lewis Hamilton, I believe. No, Valtteri Bottas, who went down the escape road at turn 3. Very poor end to the session for him. And he ends up finishing in 13th position as Valtteri Bottas. But if I was to guess at the moment, I'd say Red Bull with Max Verstappen definitely still favourites for pole position. I think Sergio Perez can go a lot quicker. Yeah, I think Red Bull are the favourites. And then AlphaTauri with Gasly probably looking best to the rest at the moment. And then you got Ferrari there. In terms of Mercedes, I'd have to say third at best. Third team at best. I don't think, though, at the moment, I would say they're third team at best. I'd probably say fourth at the moment. But at the absolute best in qualifying that I can see them finishing is probably a fourth or a fifth with one of their cars. But it's not looking good at all for the Mercedes team. And of course, in an hour and a half, you guys can join me for qualifying to see what happens and whether Mercedes can improve and actually fight for pole position, and who will get pole position in Baku later on. Thank you guys for this coming around for this stream. And again, hopefully you'll join me for the qualifying watch along starting in 90 minutes time. And again, don't forget to subscribe for that and hit the notifications bell for that. Bottom right of the screen, make sure to subscribe right there, or go to my channel page and do it there, and hit the notifications bell as well. And as well, smash the like button, share this video / stream everywhere you can, and the channel. And as well, don't forget to join my Discord server, link below in the description. Best place that is for notifications of my videos and streams. But guys, until qualifying, until the watch along show begins in an hour and a half, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.